episode of The Jump. A whole lot of chaos this past week, and as a Kentucky fan, obviously we're part of it. So I'll mention that a little bit, talk about the tournament, and talk about some chaos in Lexington going forward, as well as some other coaching hires around the country, but most importantly, the tournament. It's the elephant in the room, so what a tournament it's been so far. For the most part, it's been chalk, which is awkward because in the regular season, there was record numbers of top 10 teams going down. Every time a top 10 team went on the road, they lost. It felt like it just felt like absolute chaos the whole year. There was only a few teams. It was like Houston, UConn, Purdue that made it out of all these games fine. They were able to win. But it felt like chaos the whole regular season, the whole year. And so it's shocking that it's chalk right now because it's literally a 1 seed, a 5 seed, a 3 seed, a 2 seed in the East, and then in the South you have a 1 seed, a 4 seed, an 11 seed, and a 2 seed. In the Midwest you have a 1 seed, a 5 seed, a 3 seed, and a 2 seed. And then in the West, you have a 1 seed, a 4 seed, a 6 seed, and a 2 seed. It's chalk. It's as chalk as it's ever been. And a lot of the popular upset picks didn't happen. So everybody's brackets got busted very quick, other than Bijan Robinson apparently, because somebody leaked the script to him or something. But yeah, it's been chaos. One thing I like to note. Gonzaga's been to 9 straight Sweet 16s. I've talked about him before on this. Mark Few's a phenomenal coach, and he's just underrated all the time. 9 straight Sweet 16s is crazy. People think that they're the chokers of March. That is not the case at all. He's never missed the tournament as a coach. He's made 2 national championships. Obviously, he hasn't won one yet. But if they keep going the way they are, I don't see why they can't. This year was his best coaching job he's had, in my opinion. Not great recruits, not a great transfer class. They had some returners and stuff, but that was about it. They weren't expected to do a whole lot, and then halfway through the year, it looked like they might not even make the tournament. Here they are as a 5 seed now in the Sweet 16 for the 9th straight year. So it's impressive what he's done. And the team that they just knocked off by 21 points, Kansas, it's not a panic button, but it's just kind of worrisome what Bill Self said. He basically said that he checked out a month ago and started looking towards next year. He had kind of given up on the year. And then that was that. So, they got clobbered, and he says that in the post-game interview. So it's almost like he's, too honest. You want your coach to be honest, but I don't know if you want to hear that. So that was interesting to hear from him. Grand Canyon, shout out to them. They got their first win in the West out there. They beat St. Mary's. But, that was, what is that? Bryce Drew. What a phenomenal job he's done right there. He's only been there a couple years. And they beat their first top 25 team earlier in the year, and then they get their first NCAA tournament win in school history to wrap up this season. One popular pick that was a popular upset pick was picking New Mexico over Clemson. Some experts had New Mexico in their Final Four. Clemson just beats them first game. And then if you want to consider it an upset, it's just a 6-3, but they beat Baylor. Now they're headed to the Sweet 16. So shout out to Clemson. They've been playing great ball. But yeah, that's kind of some of the big storylines. Purdue versus Creighton, double overtime, phenomenal game. Jermaine Couisnard and N'Faly Dante combining for every single point for Oregon in the second half. That was a phenomenal game. Marquette, Colorado delivered. That was a great game. Colorado, Florida, electric. Had a Kawhi-type buzzer beater out of KJ Simpson in that one. So this tournament has been... There's a lot of people that have been bold and had certain opinions about it, saying it's not that good. And there's been better years, but this tournament's delivered. As a Kentucky fan, obviously, wish things went different. We lost to Oakland in the first round, but I think it's been long enough now that I can kind of sit it to the side and look at the story that has. Trey Townsend, obviously, his TikTok was blowing up now. But to this point, to sum it up, his dad played at Oakland. So he went to Oakland camps growing up, all this stuff. His dad becomes a photographer. And Trey ends up being a decent high school player. Doesn't get a lot of offers or anything. So he ends up walking on to Oakland. And then he ends up getting a scholarship, I think his freshman year. He gets like all conference freshman something. There's a great story of it, and he ends up knocking off 3-seed Kentucky his senior year, and he balled out against NC State. If y'all didn't watch that in the second game, even though there was a loss. And then his dad is the photographer right now, so he's the photographer for Oakland. So it's like a full circle moment for them. And then Jack Golke, I mean, he played 5 years of Division II basketball at Hillsdale College, and then he comes out and does this on the big stage, and it's 10 threes against Kentucky, and I think he hits like 6 against NC State. So like, if you sit back and look at it, like what a story that is, and like that dude was built for March Madness. So he's just one of those stories, and he's obviously thriving off of it, getting all these NIL deals now. So yeah, shout out to him, man. Obviously it was crushing. It hurt for me, but if you sit back and look at it from an unbiased perspective, what a story that is for them. Their coach has been there 40 years, and they end up getting this win, first tournament win in school history. So, yeah, shout out to Oakland. Shout out to their senior class. Rocket Watts is a senior for them too, that has had one heck of a college career. Played at Michigan State. I think he might have been on the Final Four team in 2019, and then actually he might have been a year behind that. But whatever he was. Michigan State to Mississippi State to now Oakland, and he played well in the tournament also. So, shout out to him. So, looking at the Sweet 16 now, I don't think I'm missing anything. Okay, Yale was a huge upset over Auburn. The SEC started out awful. We were like 3-5 after the first round. Shout out to Tennessee, A&M, and Alabama. So right now I think we're 5-6 through 2 rounds. But yeah, Auburn huge upset. We were a huge upset. Florida lost on that buzzer beater. Who else lost for us? Mississippi State lost to Michigan State. It's Tom Izzo, tough draw. South Carolina also a tough draw. Oregon was the hottest team in the tournament going in. So that was a tough one. So yeah, it was tough for the SEC. Bad look, definitely. Starting out, so but maybe some of these SEC teams will make a run. Other than that, in the first round, man, Tom Izzo just wins games. Arizona, they kind of flirted in the first half with like another huge 15-2 upset, but then they ended up just clobbering them. Outside of that, Duquesne, shout out to them. Their coach had retired, I think, the Friday before March Madness started, and then they upset a 6-seed BYU. So that was cool. James Madison beat Wisconsin, so that was an awesome upset. Other than that, it's pretty chalk through the first couple rounds. Northwestern, they knock off a Final Four team from last year in FAU. So, yeah, shout out to Northwestern for that. But looking at the Sweet 16 now, in the East, you get UConn versus San Diego State. It's a rematch of the national championship from last year. I mean, that you can't ask for much more. That alone is an awesome storyline. Then you get Illinois, Iowa State. The fact that one of those teams is going to the Elite Eight, Illinois in the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2005, it's crazy. It's amazing to see that. Then you move down to the West, North Carolina versus Alabama. 2 fiery teams. Like, Alabama can knock off anybody, but they could also just get obliterated. North Carolina in that second half against Michigan State looked like a national champion in every sense of the word. So they just looked dominant that whole second half. You get Clemson, Arizona. I don't know this, but I'm imagining that Clemson probably doesn't have too many Elite Eights in their school's history. And then Arizona, they're trying to make this run. Haven't been to the Final Four since 2001, 2002, something like that. So they're 2 wins away from doing that. So that awesome storylines in the West. Then you get Houston Duke. That game's gonna be phenomenal. You get like Sharp, Jamal Shedd, L.J. Cryer versus Jared McCain, Tyrese Proctor, Jeremy Roach. Like that guard matchup is gonna be phenomenal. I can't wait for that game. Duke looking like one of the best teams in the country right now. Like they never even played James Madison close. So look for Duke to maybe upset the 1 seed there. A&M almost knocked off Houston. I should have mentioned that. That was a phenomenal game. Went to overtime. Shout out to that walk-on with the last name Elvin hitting a clutch free throw late. Then you get NC State Marquette. It's an 11 seed. They keep winning. So like you gotta pull for them. DJ Burns has been electric. And then Marquette, I mean, this is Shaka Smart's first time making the second weekend since VCU in 2011. So, what a storyline there. Purdue looks like they're finally getting over the hump. They're just dominating. They'll be playing Gonzaga, a team that I think matches up with them pretty well. Like, personnel-wise, like obviously they don't have a Zach Edey, but they have physical bigs. They have guards that can hang with them. So, I think that's going to be an interesting matchup. And Mark Few, maybe they get it done and get the upset there. Creighton over Tennessee. Baylor Shireman versus Dalton Connect. There's the meme of the like the wine section in a store, and it says exciting whites. That's exactly what that is. Just Dalton Connect versus Baylor Shireman. It's going to be phenomenal. Both dudes are just buckets. So, and both of them avoided a scare to get to that point. So, one interesting note that I had for Duke. Duke hasn't beaten a higher seed in the tournament since 1994. They beat number 1 seed Purdue as a 2 seed. So they were the 2, Purdue was the 1 in 94. And it's partially because they're always the higher seed. They're always the 1, whatever it is. But they play the 1 seed Houston on Friday. So I think they've played 5 games since 94 where they had an opportunity to beat a higher seed. Most recently it was Tennessee last year, where they were a 5, Tennessee was a 4, I think. But yeah, I mean, what a storyline that is. I mean, they haven't won they haven't beat a higher seeded team since '94. It's crazy. And then out of this Sweet 16, only 6 teams have won a title. So that's always cool. We might get a new champion. So it's been a long time since NC State and Marquette. So yeah, both of them. It's been a minute. So I think that's gonna be super cool. So there has been a little bit of drama, but it came out a couple hours before shooting this podcast that like Calipari will be the head coach for Kentucky next season. Obviously, it's been mediocrity in the postseason the last couple of years. It's been extremely, extremely disappointing. But yeah, so that's an obvious point. But I'm going to talk about it nonetheless because it's the topic of discussion, and if the scenario were to happen, I want to prepare the listeners and the people that watch this podcast for what would happen. So I put, is this the end of John Calipari? Which obviously it's not. They had a meeting this afternoon, planning kind of what the future is going to look like at Kentucky, and they both agreed to continue the journey. So Seth Greenberg had a couple comments that essentially said Cal is not the same Cal. He's not necessarily working as hard as he used to. He's not all about college basketball the way he used to be. And he's kind of lost that edge, and he hopes that he can see that come back. Which that's Seth Greenberg, who's a best friend of Calipari. So it's like it's a shocking thing that he would come out and say that. Obviously, he wants the best for him, so I think it's important to note that he said that. For those of you that haven't paid attention to John Calipari's contract, he's got a lifetime contract. It was given to him in 2017. You would have been an idiot to not give it to him. In 2017, it was after De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk. We went to the Elite Eight. He asked for a lifetime contract, or he was out and going to UCLA, and you would be stupid to not give that to him at the time. So, as of right now, it's obviously not going to happen, but this is a scenario, and it's as if it would have. Right now, he would be due $33 million It runs out in 2029, even though it's considered lifetime. But it would be $33 million. If he was to get another job, it would take off of it whatever that job is paying him. So, say it's a $3 million a year. It would take off $3 million a year from the paying out of the $33 million. So it would be about $6.5 million a year. That is completely doable by SEC schools, Big Ten schools. It's a little much for like ACC, Big 12, but like it can be done. Also, the thing that I think people didn't note on top of it, buying out the assistants and building a new roster and the transfer portal and all that, you got to estimate it's about 50 to 60 million after all of that. So I think that's the notable part. But as of right now, it would be 33 million for him to be bought out. The examples that I will use, Jimbo Fisher, because that's the most recent, most egregious. That was $77 million. And there was no clause in the contract where if he got another job, it took off the money. It's $77 million. We're paying you that no matter what. John Calipari did not do that to the University of Kentucky, where he held him hostage. And then Kevin Sumlin, another Texas A&M coach, his was weird because his was like $20 million, and it was due in 60 days. So he had something there. It was crazy. So to share my opinion on the situation, I do think John Calipari should be the head coach of Kentucky next year. The thing is, a lot of the fan base, including myself, thought this season that we just had, it had all the recruits. It's the class that we had been waiting on. This was the season where if it doesn't get done, this is the end of the era. Because like there was no excuse for this year. It seems like the program and the athletic department, that's kind of their thoughts on this upcoming year. Because we have the number 2 recruiting class coming in. There's a good chance that some of these guys return. So I think that's a notable thing. And I think that's kind of the agreement that they're at. If something happens like this next year, it's over. The money will drop, obviously, from this contract to about 25 or 26 mil after next year. But the issue is, if we were to fire him this year, this was a huge part of why I didn't want to. Obviously, there is no obvious replacement at all. The ones that, in my opinion, I would have been fine with, I would have wanted to switch it up, go with Billy Donovan, Jay Wright, Brad Stevens. Those guys will probably all say no because they're all not going to come back to college. But that's the 3 you got to call first. And then, in my opinion, you take a blank check, slide it across the table to Dan Hurley, say you fill that out, and pay him whatever. And if UConn matches that and he wants to stay at UConn, then there's that. Then I think Scott Drew I would have been fine with, not excited. And I think anything else would have been a failure. So, yeah, I think it's the right move. I think it's Cal knows what is expected this next season, so I think it's just important to note that that's our guy, and we'll be going forward with him. So the other thing was, if he was to get fired, this is an example of like a guy that just signed an extension in Nate Oates. We would have had to pay Cal $33 million for the buyout of this contract, and also pay $12 million to buy out Nate Oates at Alabama, which is an unproven coach. He's not coming off a great amount of success, so I think that would be kind of dumb. So that's my thoughts. I think John Calipari needs at least another year, and I think if this is the situation that we're in next year, then some things need to happen. But other than that, there is a clip. You can find it on Twitter, or I think it's on YouTube and stuff. Look up the video of Rajon Rondo and DeMarcus Cousins talking about this situation. It's phenomenal. Them debating over it is just a great thing to see. I love it. But yeah, they did a radio show with Cal yesterday, and he said a couple notable things, like he's not going to be pushing guys out anymore. So there's a chance of a couple point guards returning. That's his words, not mine, which would mean DJ Wagner and Reed Shepherd. And I think if both of those guys return, you have no reason to be anything but excited for next year. That's just my mindset. He hinted at maybe not going on these Toronto or Bahamas trips and staying back and grinding and working on defense all summer and stuff. He hinted at some staff changes. There's a lot of drama behind the staff that I'm not going to get into because I don't fully know any of it, so I don't want to put a bad rip to people's names. And then what else did he say? There wasn't a whole lot. He said it was one of those like interviews where he says a lot without saying anything. But the little things that he hinted at were really good. He mentioned it going in the portal and getting some older guys because like that's the nature of college basketball at this point. Everybody's just 25 years old, so there is that. So he did hint at that and getting like a stronger big, more physical big, being more physical defensively, and then just getting like a veteran guard, kind of like an Antonio Reeves type thing, to kind of be a leader. So there was that. Some other coach hirings. I'm not going to mention all of them, but I'll list a few. Danny Sprinkle. He is leaving Utah State for Washington. I love that move. I feel so bad for Utah State fans. And if you look at his apology and stuff, it hurts. Not even remotely a fan of Utah State. But, yeah, that was touching. Then Kyle Smith leaving Washington State for Stanford. I think that's obvious that he's just wanting to go to a place that has a stable conference going forward. Darian DeVries leaves Drake for West Virginia. So that one's it's an interesting move, but, I mean, the Big 12 is the best conference in basketball. Mark Byington is going to Vanderbilt from James Madison. Which, speaking of James Madison, I feel bad because I saw this tweet the other day, had me dang near teared up. Yeah, it said James Madison's last 6 months. Their president, gone. Football head coach, gone to Indiana. Basketball head coach, gone. Athletic director, they also left. And they said, isn't success so fun at the group of 5 level? Yeah, that was sad. But then another one is Dusty May going to Michigan. So there was some interesting stuff behind this because there was rumors of him getting death threats at Louisville, and that's why he didn't take that job. But then some guy tried to cover it up and said that it didn't happen. He just heard somebody wrong. I don't really know what it was. But the obvious open job still is the University of Louisville. And rumors came out of them possibly going after Richard Pitino. If they go after Richard Pitino, that's the funniest outcome. That's not bringing back Kenny Payne. That would be so stupid. It's literally only off of his last name, which that last name also, the Rick Pitino, he sued them like a few years back. So let me just read to you this man's coaching record. He was at Minnesota from 2013 to 2021. Ended up getting fired. Goes to New Mexico, and he's been all right. His overall record, 221 and 175, less than 60% winning rate. He's 1-3 in Division I NCAA tournament. It's awful. I can't believe. So his record's at New Mexico: 13 and 19, 22 and 12, 26 and 10. It's unreal. Like, he had a very, very good roster this year. If they hired him, I mean, they would be so down bad. And they're already down bad. Like, they had chairs set up and everything for the Dusty May hiring. They were ready to announce it, and then Dusty May, last minute, he just ends up switching up, goes to Michigan. So that was bad. And then with this, like, death threats rumor and all this stuff, all this, like, chaos, whether it's true or not, Josh Schertz has said that he's probably not going to end up taking the job, and he's considering it, but it's a little hesitant because of that stuff. Louisville just figures out how to make it worse on themselves all the time. It's so crazy. But, like, Pat Kelsey's another name that's emerged for them. Josh Schertz. I guess Will Wade, he's got, like, a little NCAA investigation in his past, but it's also stuff that is legal now. So there's that. But it's a good job. I mean, they'll end up getting a good coach. And I think, like, they gotta get a guy that's not super risky, and I think Richard Pitino is about as risky as it gets. But a lot of the former players and stuff are being some guys that put in good words for him. So maybe that's the route they go, but it would be a bad look in my opinion. But yeah, I guess that'll just about do it for this episode. Non-college basketball, there's the new rules for the NFL. They're banning the hip drop tackle, and then they changed the kickoff format to where it will be like the XFL, where guys will be lined up on the 35 and 30, all 5 yards apart. The kicker is in the normal spot. You got to kick it in between the 20-yard line and the goal line. And there's like 2 returners. They return it, and once the ball is caught, all the defenders and like both teams can move once the ball is caught. So that'll be interesting. That'll definitely be a big change. And then what else is there? Shout out to my Kentucky women's team hiring Kenny Brooks today, the women's basketball coach from Virginia Tech, who was in the Final Four last year. And he has like a top 5 recruiting class coming in this year. So maybe he can bring those girls over to Kentucky. But he is the 3rd highest paid coach in SEC women's basketball now, behind Kim Mulkey and Don Staley. So he's in elite company pay-wise. So hopefully that'll change that program over there. They're starting to like pump money into it, knowing that like if that program does blow up, people will get behind it. Because in Kentucky, people love their basketball, whether it's women's or men's. So I'm excited for that one. MLB opening day is Thursday, so this will be uploaded Wednesday. So that'll be super cool to get baseball officially back. The Shohei Ohtani stuff, not going to mention anything on it, but it is wild. It's an insane story that all of that is going on. Other than that, I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm missing. I can't think of anything else. So I guess that'll just about do it for this episode of The Jump. Thank you again for tuning in. Enjoy some more basketball starting back Thursday. And then, I mean, the NIT is very good as well. And then I think the women's just got to the Sweet 16 also. So basketball is in full effect. Sweet 16, even as a Kentucky fan, I'm going to enjoy watching it. It's going to be exciting from here on out. So thank you. Have a great rest of the week. Enjoy the basketball starting again Thursday. And stay safe and peace.